Hello, dear ones, Father Peter John, coming to you from All Saints Orthodox Church in Bloomington, Indiana. Christ is in our midst. Today we celebrate the servant of God, the child of God, St. Nina, enlightener of Georgia, also referred to as equal to the apostles. It's a huge title. Let's find out why. She was born in the late 3rd century during the reign of the Emperor Diocletian, who was very much against the Christians. She was born of pious parents, but when she was 12 years old, her parents were so pious, in fact, that when she was 12 years old, her father became a monk, joined a monastery. Her mother was tonsured a deaconess in the church and devoted her time to serving in that way. Her uncle, St. Nina's uncle, was Patriarch of Jerusalem. Well, St. Nina had a dream, a vision of the Theotokos, who encouraged her, or shall I say exhorted her, to go and bring the gospel of Christ to the country of Georgia. So St. Nina was a little bit afraid by this, and she asked the Theotokos, who am I to go to Georgia? There's so many dangers lie out there before me. And it is said that the Theotokos gave her this very unique cross made of twigs. And then St. Nina woke up from her dream, and she was holding this cross in her hand. And so she took that cross with her as a tool of teaching and as a protection. So St. Nina went to Georgia. There's other parts to the story. She makes a trip to Rome, and there's different things. But I just want to focus on Georgia. She makes a trip then to Georgia, and she begins by preaching the gospel to shepherds that she encounters. And then she goes and she finds all of these pagans, and they're all worshiping these idols, and she's grief-stricken by this. And so she prays, and the Lord sends this great hailstorm, and the hailstones are so big that they begin to shatter the idols, and the people are absolutely terrified, and so they run off, all different directions. And so St. Nina goes to live under a bramble bush on the property of the king of Georgia. And so actually the king's gardeners lived there too. I'm not sure if that means that they built a hut beneath the bramble bush. But anyway, the gardener and his family lived there. St. Nina worked a miracle for them so that they could bear children. St. Nina healed the emperor's wife of a terminal illness. She was making great headway in her apostolic zeal in Georgia, and the king became very disturbed. He didn't like this. He was uncomfortable with this new way of living where people were turning their backs on the idols and that they were beginning to worship this one true God. And so he went on a hunting trip, and while he was out hunting, he decided that what he was going to do was he was going to begin to persecute and execute those who confessed Christ. And so he resolved in his heart that this was what he was going to do after his hunting trip. And something happened on the hunting trip, and the stories are told different ways. In one account, he's struck blind. In another account, there is great darkness that comes over the land. I'm sure there are many layers of meaning in all of this, but one way or another, he found himself terrified, unable to find his way back to the palace. So he begins to call one by one on all of these pagan deities that he has served, and he asks them one by one to remove this darkness from him, and there is no answer, there is no help, there is no assistance from any of them. And finally, in desperation and terror and fear, he cries out and says, "God of Nina, take away from me this blindness and bring me safely back to the palace, and I will serve you all the days of my life." And so, all of a sudden, he can see the light, and he comes back to the palace. He finds Nina. He tells her what his intentions are. He is baptized. He begins to encourage the spreading of the gospel. Ultimately, Georgia becomes a strong Christian nation. And it's because of this little girl. This little girl. So how many of us sometimes feel like we're not up to a task? We feel like, who am I, right, to be sent to do this? Who am I to speak to that person about Christ? Who am I to undertake this task? St. Nina gives us a great example. This little girl, this little 12-year-old girl, I'm not sure how old she was when she actually went to Georgia, but she wasn't very old. She was a teenager. And she made an impact such that an entire nation of people came to believe in Christ because of her witness, because of her faith. I would say because of her courage. It's not that she wasn't afraid. We know from the saint's story that she was afraid. She was fearful, but that she trusted God to protect her, and she trusted that the Theotokos would be watching over her by her prayers as well. So brothers and sisters, the next time we feel overwhelmed or tempted to think, who am I? I'm not up to this task. Let's remember the example of this little Nina, who became this great saint, the equal to the apostles, the enlightener of Georgia. Christ is in our midst. He is and ever shall be.